What is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Eric, and this is Eric Bets Fights. Welcome back, everybody. It's time for my full card breakdown, betting breakdown of UFC 282, headlined by Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev, which is going to be for the. Is it for the interim light heavyweight title? No, I think it's for the actual light heavyweight title, isn't it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're calling it an interim belt or not. If you know, let me know down in the comments down there. And speaking of comments, it worked pretty well last week when I asked people to leave a comment. Let's do the same thing again this week. Why don't you take a second and let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite bet for UFC 282? Like, if you could only place one bet for this whole card, where do you think the best value is on UFC 282? Whether it's whether it's a money line, whether it's a prop, whatever it might be. My camera is a little crooked. You know what? I'm not going to mess with that right now because I'll just make it worse. Okay. We're not going to do a recap. You guys hear me say this like every time I do a video. I have to go kind of quickly again tonight. This is going to be a little bit of a, not like rapid fire, but a little bit quicker. I have to go to my stepdaughter's band concert. I got to leave in like an hour and I should take a shower first. So I better go kind of quick. But I will be doing a panel. I'm recording this on Tuesday night, which is one day early. Usually I do it on Wednesday. I'm doing a panel tomorrow, Wednesday night, December 7th, with Couch Warrior and Patrick from Addicted to Combat and Johnny K. I don't know if we're doing it on Couch Warrior's channel or on Addicted to Combat's channel, but I'm guessing most of you watching this are familiar with those guys as well, Mike from Couch Warrior and Patrick from Addicted to Combat. If you're not, make sure to look them up. They are super cool. But yeah, I'll be on a panel tomorrow with those guys, and I'll probably have time to share a little more detail on the fights at that time, but I'm gonna try to go a little bit quickly here, get this done in maybe 45 minutes or something like that. But we'll see how it goes. I'm not gonna do a recap. I did have a losing event on the last event. I don't remember. I lost like, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 units or something like that, but yeah, I've been like like this, a little up, a little down, pretty much pushing sideways for literally like the last 6 months. Like, the number of units I have now, it's pretty much the same as the number of units I had like back in, I don't know, March or something. So I guess more than 6 months. But hey, it's better than losing. I'm still up on the year. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into breaking this down. First thing I want to mention before we jump into it right here, you'll see on the screen here, if you go to the description of this video, you'll see the link as well. I have partnered with BetUS, and if you click the link that I put it down below here, you can do, if you see on the screen here, deposit $200, play with $450. So they're doing a thing where, like, they're matching your deposit. If I'm understanding it correctly, they're matching your deposit at 125%. So for every $100 you put in, they're going to put in an additional $125 of like free play to match it. And if you take advantage of that deal and you use the link that I have down below, that link is specific to me, and I get like a little bit of a revenue share there. So as I mentioned last week, I put a lot of time into this and I don't make any money at it, and I'm not trying to like beg for money because that's not my style. But this is a way that you can take advantage of a good deal that's out there without doing anything different than you might otherwise do, and I will get to share in a little piece of it. So yeah, if you feel like checking out a new book, or if you're already a BetUS member, why not give it a go? All right, with that, let's go ahead and jump into this card, folks. UFC 282. We're looking at, it was like a 14 or 15 fight card, but we've lost some fights now. But yeah, starting at the bottom card and working our way up. The very first fight on the card is going to be Cameron Simon versus Steven Kozlow. I didn't really know anything about either of these guys going into this. Once I watched Cameron Simon, I realized that I had watched him on Contender Series. I just didn't remember the name. And Steven Kozlow was not somebody that I was familiar with at all. Cameron Simon, he looks decent. He's only 21 years old. He definitely has some skills. He looks pretty good on the feet. He looks pretty crisp, pretty fast, pretty powerful. You can kind of tell that he's only 21 years old, though. Like, he does have some solid skills, but you can tell that he needs a little bit of seasoning. He needs a little bit of experience to kind of be able to put it all together. He did look a little shaky in round one. He fought Josh Wong Kim on Contender Series, but as Wong Kim started to slow down, Simon really came alive in the later in the fight, and his striking looked really, really good, really crisp, really, really accurate. He's pretty fast. He's got decent movement. He does a lot of stance switching. Steven Kozlow, there's very little footage that I can find on him, and the footage that I could find was like just like shaky. like his mom was sitting cage side taping him on her Nokia or something. It was just really shaky, bad footage. It was hard to even tell which guy was Kozlov in the ring. So yeah, I don't know much about him. Couch Warrior was able to find out a little bit more about Cameron Simon and how he performed against a grappler. Kozlov is a grappler. This is kind of a striker versus grappler matchup. And I know Couch Warrior, make sure to check out the panel. I'm sure he'll talk about this more, but he did find some older footage of Cameron Simon where he was able to be dominated by a grappler, and it was not a very high level grappler apparently. So yeah, Cameron Simon is favored here. He's like minus 280. Stephen Kozlov plus 230. But if what Couch Warrior says is correct, there might be a little bit of value on Kozlov there. But yeah, I don't have a strong feeling about this fight because, like I said, I was barely able to find any footage on Kozlov at all. So I'm just going to pick Cameron Simon because he's a slightly more known commodity, but no bet from me on that one. Next up, we've got Daniel De Silva versus Vinicius Salvador. This should be a fun fight for as long as it lasts. Daniel De Silva 11-4, Vinicius Salvador 14-4. This fight's taking place at flyweight. We see here Vinicius Salvador is a pretty big favorite at minus 200 to come back on Daniel De Silva as the underdog. Salvador is 1 inch taller, half an inch reach. So yeah, they're about the same size. No real big deal there. This is an interesting fight because both of these guys are skilled. Both of these guys are dangerous. But what we've seen from Daniel De Silva in the octagon so far, what is he? Has he fought 3 times and lost all 3 or 2? I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh yeah, that's right. I always forget Tapology shows me this stuff right here. So yeah, Victor Altamirano, Francisco Figueiredo, Jeff Molina. So yeah, he's dropped 3. So obviously, he's fighting for his job here. If he drops this one, he will be out of the organization. But he's also only 26, so he could fight his way back if that does happen. But over the years, we've seen a lot of fighters who are really dangerous early, but if they can't find that finish, they just fall off. And Daniel De Silva is our latest example of that. The kid's got skills. He's a good striker. He's a good grappler. He's very quick. He's very athletic. He's very creative. He's a very good fighter for about 3 minutes, and then he just falls apart. If he can't get you out of there within those first few minutes, things just don't go his way. I think I made this joke a different time that I talked about Daniel De Silva, but the way his game is, like if you're an 80s kid and you remember Voltron, the way I would describe Daniel De Silva, he has all the lions. He just hasn't figured out how to put them together and build Voltron yet. He's got the skills, but he just hasn't been able to figure out how to put those skills together into a really consistent MMA game that doesn't fall apart on him. Vinicius Salvador, he's super fun to watch. I really had a great time watching him on Contender Series where he fought Shannon Ross. He was a pretty big underdog there, and he looked great. But yeah, he's one of those guys who's on the feet. He's really loose. He's got kind of just weird loose movements. He keeps his hands really low, kind of like the way that you would see Anderson Silva fight at times. I mean, he's not, he doesn't have the skill level of Anderson Silva, but it's a little bit like that, where he's just kind of loose and keeps his hands low and just kind of rolls with punches and flows. And he's interesting to watch because he clearly has good power, but he's not very fast. The way he throws is just kind of loose and kind of slow almost. And I almost think that might benefit him in a way, because I think the way he throws and the way he moves, it kind of throws off the rhythm of his opponents. I think, like because his punches are kind of coming slow and loopy and weird, like it's almost like you're defending at the wrong time because you think it's going to be there and it's not there yet or something. But I don't know. I might just be making that up, but it makes sense in my head. De Silva does have some grappling upside here, so it's a possibility he could take Vinicius Salvador down and submit him early. But this is one of those fights where, like, De Silva, like I said, De Silva is going to be dangerous early, but probably fall off and allow Salvador to take over late. The bet that I like the most in this fight, rather than picking a side, Salvador at minus 200, I wouldn't bet him there. If I was going to bet a side, I'd probably go with the underdog money on Daniel De Silva, but I'd probably just take him like inside the distance or even in round 1 or something. But I actually like the under 1.5 here. Daniel De Silva just doesn't. Either he finds a finish or he gets finished in the first round most of the time. So I think that's a decent way to approach this one. Next up, we've got Erik Silva versus TJ Brown, taking place in the featherweight division. So watching the tape on Erik Silva, I was pretty impressed with him, actually. This fight is a coin flip. The thing that's kind of a bummer about Erik Silva, he's already 35, almost 36 years old, coming in and making his UFC debut at almost 36 years old. So even if the guy is really good, he's raw. he's not super polished, but he's definitely a skilled guy, and he's a lot of fun to watch. But it's like, what's he really going to do? A 145-pound fighter who's 4 months away from 3 months away from turning 36. He's just, what kind of a splash is he really going to be able to make at this point? We do have to bear in mind, of course, that Randy Couture made his MMA debut at 34 and managed to be one of the best ever, and win a UFC fight at age 48 and stuff. But that is definitely the exception to the rule, right? Of people coming into the sport that late. But these guys are about the same size, both 5'9". TJ Brown allegedly has 2.5 inches of reach, if that can be believed here. One thing I really liked about Silva, like, he's super aggressive. He literally runs across the cage, shoots a takedown. I love his ground and pound. He's really good at some fighters, like, they can establish top control, they can keep tight top control, or they can land ground and pound, but they kind of can't do both. He's pretty good at doing both. He gets the takedown. He uses his head position really well to control his opponent. He stays tight to his opponent, and he manages to land hard elbows and punches from the top while still maintaining pretty good control. So that was kind of nice to see. Um, you know, it, I get why. Actually, you know what? I forgot to pull up fightodds.io, because I like to see if a lot of times the Tapology odds are not really up to date. Um, okay, so yeah, it is pretty much a coin flip. All right, wanted to see if that was still accurate. TJ Brown, he's a pretty well-rounded fighter. He's a pretty good wrestler. He's decent with his positional grappling on the ground, decent boxer, hits pretty hard. This is one of those spots that I like what I see from Eric Silva, but it's hard not to favor TJ Brown here, just as the younger guy with a well-rounded skill set who has the UFC experience under his belt. But this should be a fun fight. I wouldn't be completely shocked if Eric Silva was able to come out here and get it done, but I'm going to pick TJ Brown, but I don't really like a bet on anything here. This is one I'm just going to stay away from. Next up, we've got what should be an absolute banger in Billy Q versus Alex Hernandez, taking place at featherweight, right? Yeah, because Hernandez is coming down. We see Billy Q at 16-4, Alex Hernandez at 13-5. Billy Q favored at -165. Let me check fight odds, because I don't think that's quite right, actually. I think, okay, -160. All right, yeah, that is pretty accurate. -165 or so. Come back on Alex Hernandez +135. Billy Q is 34 years old. Alex Hernandez 30 years old. They're about the same size. We see Billy Q an inch taller. Hernandez with 2 inches of reach, but Hernandez is coming down from lightweight, and he's a pretty thick guy even at lightweight. He's coming down to featherweight here, even though Billy Q is an inch taller. Assuming Alex Hernandez's weight cut goes okay and everything, he's going to be the thicker, more physical guy in there. I think. I don't know what the heck happened to my notes on this fight. Um, so I'm just going to talk and see see what I can remember about the notes that I typed up. But Billy Q is super active on the feet. He puts out a lot of volume. He mixes up his strikes really well. He likes to come forward. I mean, he's a guy who's he goes for it. He's not one of those guys who's kind of like hanging back waiting. He stays in your face. He continues to throw punches. Alex Hernandez doesn't quite put out the same volume as Billy Q, but I think Hernandez, he cracks a little harder. Billy Q is more of a guy who's going to put some volume on you. Hernandez is more so going to look to land that one big one. When Billy Q fought Burgos, he did a really nice job of staying in Burgos's face, keeping him uncomfortable, keeping him on the back foot. And I think he's probably going to be able to do something similar to Alex Hernandez here. Oh yeah, as far as the numbers, like I said, Billy Q has excellent volume. He attempts more than 13 significant strikes per minute and lands more than 7. So those are pretty good stats there. And like I said, Hernandez, he does throw hard. He's got knockout power. He throws really nice straight punches with good power. 3 of his 5 UFC wins have come by first round KO. So that's definitely something to keep in mind there. Overall, I think Hernandez's path to victory is probably to find that early KO, and which he could potentially do. But I think it's more likely that the fight goes long and Billy Q is just able to stay in his face, able to keep that volume on him, especially with Hernandez dropping down to 145 here. We just haven't seen that working well. Fighters lately that, Dan Hooker did it. I mean, any number of fighters lately that have tried to drop down from lightweight to featherweight, it just doesn't tend to go well for them. So I'm going to assume that trend kind of continues here. I like Billy Q to probably either, win a high volume decision, or maybe Hernandez slows down late and Billy Q is able to finish him. But yeah, I like Billy Q here. No bet from me though. The line, I don't really see much value on the line. Next up, we've got what should be an absolute banger in Chris Curtis versus Joaquin Buckley. These guys should put on a good one for us. Both pretty, fun fighters to watch. Likable guys. I mean, Curtis isn't always. Chris Curtis can be he can be one of those guys who kind of hangs back and waits for his moment a little bit too much. Not necessarily an all action guy all the time, but fights taking place at middleweight. For the records, we see Chris Curtis at 29-9. We see Joaquin Buckley at 15-5. Buckley favored at -150. Comeback on Chris Curtis plus 125. I think that's still pretty accurate. Chris Curtis is 35 years old. Buckley's only 28. Wow, I didn't realize Buckley was that young. They are the same height, which surprises me. In my mind, Buckley should be bigger than Curtis, taller than Curtis, and Buckley's got half an inch of reach. As far as stylistically breaking these guys down, Chris Curtis he's a pretty technical boxer. He keeps things pretty tight. He keeps things pretty buttoned up. But like I said, he can be pretty low volume. He can be one of those fighters who, and there'll be other fighters that I'll say this about on the same card too. I think it won't be the only time I'll use this phrase, but he can get a little bit lulled into waiting for his openings to counter rather than trying to just create those openings or make something happen. He can kind of just wait and wait and wait for that opening, and he's not throwing anything. And it's like, come on, man, just throw something. He almost like we see some fighters who are content to just put volume on, like Billy Q, like content to I'm just going to land punches. I'm going to land punches. I'm going to land punches. It doesn't matter if one of those punches knocks you out or not. And some fighters who are like, I'm not even going to throw a punch until I see an opening that I think could potentially be a knockout. And Chris Curtis could kind of get lulled into that a little bit more than I like to see. Um, Joaquin Buckley, not as technical of a boxer as Chris Curtis, but he's extremely athletic, extremely explosive, extremely powerful. Like I said, Chris Curtis keeps it pretty buttoned up. Joaquin Buckley's the opposite. He's one of those guys who's going to explode forward with a big punch. I mean, he's putting himself out of position and that sort of thing because he's just exploding with big movements. But yeah, I mean, that can be effective. But Chris Curtis is also a guy that, I mean, how many times in the UFC already have we seen him? He's one of those guys he's losing until he's not, right? He's getting out volumed, out finessed, outworked, outstruck, but all he needs is to find that opening. He's a great counter striker and he hits hard. And Buckley is the kind of guy who, because he is so kind of wild and loose and putting himself out of position, it's pretty likely that he's going to present Curtis with opportunities to have that opening that he needs to find, like a big counter hook or something like that for a KO. So, and also Joaquin Buckley, because he explodes into everything, we do see Buckley try to wrestle sometimes. He might try to wrestle here. Chris Curtis has 100% takedown defense in the UFC so far. He defended like 22 takedowns against Rodolfo Vieira. So Chris Curtis has, not to say that Buckley couldn't take him down, he could, but so far Curtis has had bulletproof takedown defense. And of course, Buckley being that muscular, explosive guy that he is, attempting to wrestle is potentially gonna slow him down. So you're gonna tire him out. So if he does attempt to wrestle, but even if he doesn't, just the way he throws strikes, he throws everything with big power. He will tend to slow down. He fits pretty well through it. He finds a second and third wind, but something to keep in mind. So I actually, I think I'm going to pick Chris Curtis here. I'm a little bit concerned about his low volume and that Buckley could have the higher volume and just kind of have the bigger, more impressive looking moments to the judges. But I like Curtis to potentially be able to find that opening to knock Buckley out at some point. Um, I probably, it's one of those situations where like, okay, well, if I like Curtis to win and he's an underdog, I should bet him, right? I don't trust that read enough that I'm going to at this point. If Curtis got to like plus 150 or something, what is he at on fight odds? Plus one, yeah, he's up at like plus 130, plus 140 in spots, but I don't think I have any of those anyway, any of those books. But yeah, I think I'm gonna stay away from it for now though. I did see some people betting an over 1.5 on this. I didn't have a 1.5 on my book. I don't think. I think I had a 2.5. But yeah, I would probably bet an over 1.5 on this because I do think it probably goes longer than that. But yeah, I'm gonna pick Chris Curtis. Let's say by round 3 KO. Next up, we've got Edmund Shabazian versus Dolce Champion Lungiambula. Edmund Shabazian, dude's only 25 years old, which blows my mind. It seems like he's been in the UFC forever already. This fight's taking place at middleweight. We see Shabazian at 11-3, Dulce at 11-5. Shabazian, a huge favorite at -300, Dulce at +240. And yeah, we see Edmund Shabazian at 25 years old, Dulce at 35 years old. And this is the interesting part that stands out to me here. Edmund Shabazian is 6'2". Dulce Lungiambula is 5'8". So Shabazian is 6 inches taller, but Lungiambula has a 2-inch reach advantage. So if you do the math, Dulce Lungiambula is 5 feet 8 inches tall. His wingspan is 6 feet 4 inches. So the guy's got some long arms and some wide shoulders, and when you put that all together, you get quite a wingspan. So stylistically, Edmund Shabazian, obviously, he looked very, very impressive. What did he win? 4 or 5 fights in a row when he first came into the UFC, and now he's on a 3-fight skid against excellent competition. He lost to Nasruddin Imavov, Jack Hermanson, Derek Brunson. He's only 25, so he's fighting those guys when he's what, 23, 24 years old. It was just too much too soon for him, I think. It's not that he's not still an excellent prospect. And at 25 years old, I mean, he just turned 25. He's still going to be getting better and better. I don't know if I want to say an uber prospect, but it's definitely not time to be writing Edmund Shabazian off just because he's lost 3 in a row against some really, really good fighters. Um, Dulce's also on a 3-fight skid, but he lost to definitely lower level competition than Shabazian, with Dulce's last 3 losses being Puna Soriano, Cody Brundage, and Marc Andre Barrio. Nothing against those guys, but they're a little more middling than who Shabazian has lost to in his last 3. Shabazian is an excellent striker. He's got fast, accurate hands. He's got good power. He can knock you out. He's got a little bit of a karate style, not like to the extent that like Stephen Thompson or Lyoto Machida, but you can tell Shabazian grew up doing Shotokan. He's a Shotokan black belt. You can see at times that he's got kind of that sideways, wide stance kind of thing going on. So you can see the karate influence in his striking game, I think. Um, he can also grapple. He doesn't necessarily look to actively grapple all that much, but he's definitely comfortable there. He's got good ground and pound. Dulce Lungiambula is extremely, extremely athletic, kind of an athletic freak, really. Kind of one of those guys who is just kind of able to just rely on being a lot stronger, a lot faster, and a lot more powerful than most of the people he's fighting. He also has, he has a high level judo pedigree, so it's not like he doesn't have skills. As far as the striking, I don't know. I feel like he kind of just relies on his natural power and athleticism when it comes to the striking. And even though he does have that judo, um, you do see like big high octane judo throws from him sometimes, but then he kind of lacks the wrestling to keep somebody down. He'll have the huge moment where he gets a big judo throw and it looks awesome, but the person is back up on their feet 5 seconds later. So in the end, what good did it really do besides it looked cool and maybe it knocked the wind out of them a little bit or whatever. But I think the line is accurate here. Dulce is one of those guys who's pretty dangerous, but just not super skilled as a mixed martial arts fighter overall. Nothing against him, but he's going to come out throwing his big haymakers. And Shabazian is a savvy enough striker, has good enough movement on the feet and stuff that I think he's going to be able to avoid what Dulce throws his way. And Dulce, because he relies so much on his explosiveness and athleticism, that always falls off. Not necessarily that he's going to death gas, but that always falls off a little bit. As we move into round 2, and then as we move into round 3, he's a little bit less explosive, a little bit less powerful, and I think Shabazian will be able to take over. I think we see Edmund Shabazian probably find a knockout here. Let's say maybe in round 2. I don't mind Shabazian as a parlay piece here. I don't know, -300 is pretty wide, but he should win. So I don't know if I'll bet him or not. I might have even put him in a parlay. I can't remember. You guys who've watched me a lot know that I like to take a look at my bets at the end of the video here, but a lot of times I can't even remember what bets I put in. So it's fun for me to. It's a little bit of a surprise. Like, oh, I did bet that. I couldn't remember if I did or not. We at 23 minutes. All right, we're doing okay. Moving on to Jay Perrin versus Raul Rosas Jr. So we're going to see the record will finally be broken for the youngest fighter to ever compete in the UFC. Currently, the youngest fighter to ever fight in the UFC is Sean Dougherty. He fought at UFC 2. I think he fought Scott Morris on a prelim fight. If you've ever watched UFC 2, there's a part. So he was on a prelim fight, so it wasn't broadcast. Well, now if you watch now on Fight Pass and you watch the old UFCs, they have the prelim fights on there now. But back when I was watching the VHS tapes and stuff, they didn't even have the prelim fights on the VHS tapes, so you could like read about them, but you couldn't even watch them. But if you watch the UFC 2 event, there's a part where it shows this kid. I think he's got his shirt off and he's wearing like white gi pants and he's like breaking bricks. That's Sean Doherty. He was a 18-year-old karate kid. But yeah, he was 18 years and 3 months about, and Raul Rosas Jr. is coming in at 18 years and 2 months. So as long as he doesn't get injured and pull out of this fight, he will be the youngest UFC fighter ever. Signed off the Contender Series at age 17. So this fight's at bantamweight. We see Jay Perrin 10-6, Raul Rosas Jr. undefeated at 6-0. Raul Rosas Jr. minus 230. Come back on Jay Perrin plus 190. I'm going to check that and make sure that's right. Yeah, that's pretty close. Pretty accurate. So yeah, we see Jay Perrin at age 29. So he's 10 years older, but this is one of those situations where 10 years older isn't really going to be a problem, because 29 is like in your prime. So it's okay. We see Raul Rosas Jr. at 5'9", 2 inches taller than the 5'7" Jay Perrin, and Jay Perrin with a 2-inch reach advantage, 69 inches versus 67 inches. I do think that for the most part, the line probably makes sense here. If you watch Raul Rosas Jr., I mean, the kid started training at MMA when he was like 5, and he allegedly took his first fight when he was 8. I can't even imagine what an MMA fight between 8-year-olds looks like, but I mean, this kid literally grew up on the mat, started training MMA as a little child, grew up fighting, grew up training with adults. I mean, ever from the time he was a little kid, he's been training with wrestling, with grappling, with sparring with adults. So he's kind of a special talent to be coming into the UFC. Really, I mean, just as far as the seasoning he's already had but being only 18 years old. Um, he's got, he looks. I wouldn't say that his striking is like super refined, but he's got creative, quick, dynamic striking. He moves well on the feet. He wrestles well, but mostly, um, his positional grappling looks awesome. His jiu-jitsu just looks awesome. When on the ground, he floats really well. He transitions really well between positions. And it's like he's just like good at beating his opponent to the next position. Like his opponent, if he feels his opponent turning under him or rolling or something, he's so good at just like floating it and understanding what that next position is and getting there. And it's just he's really fun to watch on the ground. And even he can get into just like weird positions on the ground, and he seems comfortable, like going for a Suloev stretch, going for like like an inverted triangle. Like he's kind of seen it all as far as different positions, and it's really kind of cool to watch. As far as Jay Perrin, he's one of those guys that I just don't feel like I've figured him out yet. I just don't know if he's very good. Like so he looks okay. I mean, he looked decent against Mario Bautista, right? And Mario Bautista is pretty freaking good. He's got serviceable skills everywhere. He's tough and scrappy, but he just doesn't necessarily have an area where his skills stand out to me, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. The jury's still out on Jay Perrin a little bit for me, I guess. If you're watching this, Jay Perrin, I'm sorry to say that. Don't worry, you guys. He's not watching this. Um, I think he's a guy. I think Jay Perrin's a guy who can fight closely with a lot of people, but I also think he's going to end up losing those fights more often than not. So to me, it does, the line kind of does make sense here, even though it's an 18-year-old kid coming in against a UFC tested fighter. I think Raul Rosas Jr. is just going to be too much for Jay Perrin, and I think the UFC knows that, and I think that's why they matched him up the way that they did. Because it's not like they want Raul Rosas Jr. to come in here and lose in his debut. Not that the UFC's plans always work out, but I think they know what they're doing here. I think Raul Rosas Jr. Either dominantly grapples his way to a decision or possibly even finds a submission along the way. I'm not going to bet him though. His line is a little wide for that. Next up, we've got a heavyweight fight. All right, I got to hurry it up a little bit. Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Chris Daukaus at heavyweight. Similar records: Jairzinho 12-4, Daukaus 12-5. We see Jairzinho the favorite at minus 170. Come back on Chris Daukaus plus 145. 34 years old for Jairzinho, 33 for Daukaus. Jairzinho is about 200. He comes in around 255 to 260 pounds, or pretty close to the limit. Whereas Daukaus is a little smaller, 243. Daukaus is 1 inch taller at 6'3". And Jairzinho has 2 inches of reach, 78 inches to 76 inches. So even though Daukaus is taller, he's one of those guys he's really kind of a 205er who just doesn't cut, right? I mean, when he first came into the UFC, he was pretty chubby. He's less so now, but he's still kind of got that spare tire hanging out, right? He's really not He's a tall guy, but he's not a particularly big guy. I think he definitely could be a 205er if he wanted to, but I think he likes the the speed and movement advantage that he has over the big boys. So he sticks around at heavyweight. But part of me thinks that this fight should be a coin flip and there's value on Dacos at plus 145. But he did get KO'd by Curtis Blades his last time out. He got outstruck and KO'd by Curtis Blades, who's not a guy that we really think of as like a big striker, right? And he's been KO'd twice in a row, right? Curtis Blades, and then before that by Derek Lewis. Does that mean his chin is shot? I don't know, but he has been knocked out twice in a row, and now he's coming in here against a knockout artist. So I just feel like Rosenstrike is really, really low volume, a little bit like I was saying about Chris Curtis. He kind of waits rather than trying to put hands on you. He waits for his moments to counter, and he wants to find that big one. He's like Jairzinho is not a guy who's going to win a decision, right? He's not in there to win a decision. He's either going to catch you with a big punch and knock you out, or he's going to tire out and you're going to knock him out, or you're going to win a decision over him. He doesn't put out enough volume. He doesn't try to touch you up. He's throwing punches to knock you out. And so I lost sight of the point I was trying to make there. But anyway, I think most likely it's tough to be confident in how this fight will play out, but considering that we've seen Duckhouse get knocked out in his last two fights, and considering Rosenstrike is really good at finding those moments to land a big punt, land a big hook or land a big counter. I think it's likely that he does find one of those moments. I think he probably lands something big on Duckhouse and knocks him out, probably in the first or second round. But it's one of those spots like if you're gonna bet Jairzinho, I think you just bet his KO prop. I don't see. I think he's minus 170. I think his KO prop was at like minus 105. I don't like betting a prop with a minus sign in front of it, but in my opinion, that's Jairzinho's KO prop is almost his money line here. Yeah, and I say that, and now this will be the time that Jairzinho will win a decision. But yeah, if I was going to bet him, I'd bet him by KO because I just don't see him winning any other way. But yeah, I think a Jairzinho KO is probably the most likely outcome here, but I don't think that I will be betting it. Next fight up, we've got maybe my favorite fight on the whole card: Bryce Mitchell versus Ilia Topuria, taking place at featherweight. Both guys are undefeated. Someone's O has got to go. Do you hate that I said that? I do too. Don't worry about it. Ilia Topuria is 12-0. Thug Nasty at 15-0. We see Ilia Topuria about minus 140. Come back on Bryce Mitchell as the underdog plus 120. Ilia Topuria is 25 years old. Bryce Mitchell is 28. Bryce Mitchell has 3 inches of height, 5'10" to Topuria's 5'7". And he's got 1 inch of reach, 70 inches to Topuria's 69 inches. I'm going to try to keep this one quick. I think this is an awesome fight. I think both of these guys are really, really good, and both of these guys have a fantastic future ahead of them. They're both young and already very, very good. Bryce Mitchell, of course, mostly known for his wrestling and grappling. He's one of those guys who the three things that I like to see in this style of fighter: he has the wrestling skill, he has the tenacity and desire to use the wrestling, and he has the cardio to keep it up. Those are great fighters to bet on. However, Topuria has those things as well. I see my basic breakdown for this fight is I think Topuria is the overall better MMA fighter. He has more skills, more ways to win this fight. Bryce Mitchell is an excellent wrestler. He's an excellent grappler, and he has a stand-up game that's kind of similar to what we see from Ryan Hall, right? He kind of has developed like a kicking heavy stand-up game where he'll use hook kicks and things like that. And I think it's because he doesn't mind if you take him down, so he doesn't mind just kind of throwing crazy kicks out there and being creative with his striking. But Topuria has much more powerful striking, much better boxing. He's much more of a KO threat, much better striker in the pocket and that kind of thing. And plus, he does have the wrestling and grappling as well. So I see this as, I think Bryce Mitchell's way to win this fight is to get takedowns and grind out top control, which is what he pretty much always does. And I don't know if he can do that to Ilia Topuria, but maybe he can. So to me, the line is about right. I think Topuria being a small favorite makes sense here. I did bet Topuria. I think I got him at like minus 145 or something like that. I think I was willing to cap him at like maybe minus 160, minus 170. I can't remember exactly, but essentially my read just comes down to I think Bryce Mitchell needs to get takedowns and ride out top control, and I don't know that he can do that. And if he can't, if the fight does play out largely on the feet, I just think Topuria is the much better striker and the much more powerful striker. So I think that I see him taking it. So I do like Ilya Topuria here. We'll say, I will say by decision, but maybe he finds a KO. Next up, we've got Darren Till versus Dricus Duplessis. This is taking place at middleweight. We see Till at 18-4-1, Dricus at 17-2. Dricus' nickname is Still Knox. I have no idea what that means. I should probably look it up sometime. It's a weird word. Dricus is all the way up to almost 2-1 now, minus 190 with Darren Till at plus 160. Dricus is 28, Till 29. About the same size, 6'1" to 6 foot, 76-inch reach to 75-inch reach. So they're about the same size. Till obviously used to fight at 170, has now moved up to 185. So, he's not the most massive 185er. Duplessis is a very strong. I mean, he's going to be the stronger, more physical guy in there, I think. But I think Till is probably the more, the more refined striker, the more he has the more refined skills in the cage, guess you could say. Duplessis is one of those guys who's kind of all power all the time. He throws everything hard. He literally runs across the ring, throwing punches with his chin like in the air. Like when I watch Dricus Duplessis fight, I'm like, is there something interesting on the roof or like on the ceiling of the arena? Why is he like, I mean, literally with his chin straight up in the air running across. And so, and the one thing that Darren Till is really, really good at is he has very, very fast, accurate, straight punches. And even though Dricus is the harder hitter here, probably the more powerful guy, probably has the grappling upside. Darren Till does have 79% takedown defense. He's pretty hard to take down. He's not that hard to hold down if you get him down, though, which is a little bit of a concern. So if Dricus does look to wrestle here, if he really looks to push the grappling, I think he could have success there. But if he's not able to get takedowns, or if he doesn't look to push the grappling, if this fight takes place mostly in the stand-up, I think Till's going to crack him at some point. I think Duplessis, he's not defensively minded enough, and Till is so good with just like that laser straight counter. Like I think he's going to be able to find Duplessis' chin at some point and put him out. So I'm not real confident how this fight's going to play out. Is there going to be a lot of, is there going to be a lot of grappling? Is there going to be a lot of, cage pushing and Dricus looking for takedowns? Is it going to be mostly, striking out in the open? I don't know. But after watching the tape, I was willing to favor Till slightly. And then when I pulled up the odds, Till was at plus 128. So I bet him at plus 128. And now he's out there. He can be found for like plus 170. And I'm trying to decide if I want to put a little on that. But I was also thinking about putting a little on his KO prop, which I haven't done yet. But I do think it's a close fight, but I'm leaning Till just a little bit, largely because of Duplessis just being so hittable. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Darren Till. I'm gonna say he finds a knockout in round 2. Just a couple fights left, or well, not a couple, 3. Oh, I forgot about this one. I actually kind of have to skip this one, you guys, because I haven't done the tape. I mean, I did tape on Ponzinibbio when he was matched up with Robbie Lawler, but I haven't done the tape on Morono. And kind of obviously I know Morono to some degree, but I have, I really have to tape a matchup very specifically to be able to talk about it with a whole lot of confidence. So I don't have much to say about this fight. Where are the odds? Do they have them on here? They don't. But I saw the odds. I think Ponzinibbio was like minus 190 or something like that. So I guess that would put the comeback on Morono at like what, plus 150 or something. Anyway, yeah, I'd have to watch the tape to really have much to say about this fight. So I was gonna talk about it a little bit, but in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip it because I'm just gonna end up talking out my ass anyway. If you want to get my thoughts on that fight, I don't know, maybe I'll have some time to watch a little tape before the panel tomorrow, but I don't think I will because I think I'm gonna be working all day. But anyway, but come to that panel because Couch Warrior and Johnny K and Patrick, they will definitely have some things to say about this fight. So oh, next up, the co-main event is going to be Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon, taking place in the lightweight division. We've got Paddy Pimblett at 19-3, Jared Gordon 19-5. Paddy is a moderate-sized favorite at minus 245 with the comeback on Jared Gordon at plus 200. We see Paddy at 27 years old. He's about to turn 28. Jared Gordon at 34. Paddy's 1 inch taller at 5'10", and he's got 5 inches of reach, 73 inches to Jared Gordon's 68 inches. This is a spot where, like I said, the UFC's, the best laid plans of men in the UFC, right? Like the UFC's plans don't always work. but a lot of times they do, and they know what they're doing. They're not ready for Paddy Pimblett to lose yet. They're matching him up favorably. I think a really, really solid I think a really solid, physically powerful wrestler might have their way with Paddy Pimblett, and I think a really slick, powerful striker with good takedown defense might have their way with Paddy Pimblett because he's pretty wild on the feet. He's pretty raw overall, right? I mean, he's got some athleticism, he's got some physicality, he's got some skills, but he's still pretty raw. He really is, you know. I mean, the way he does leave a lot of openings. I mean, especially in the stand up. He leaves his chin out there when he allows himself to get into pretty wild exchanges with his chin in the air. Like, so there are fighters. How do I say this? Paddy's one of the biggest stars in the UFC right now, and they want to keep him that way. And they know that he's not that good. And I don't mean that in a negative way. He is a skilled and talented guy, but they understand where his level is at, and they understand how they need to match him up right now. It's not that he sucks, it's not that he's shitty, he's decent, but he's not ready for the upper echelon yet, and they know that. Jared Gordon is the kind of opponent that Paddy Pimblett can beat. Jared Gordon might even be the kind of opponent that Paddy Pimblett can come out in style on, which is pretty much what he's done on the people they've matched him up with so far, and I think he might be able to come out and do that again. Jared Gordon, I've said this about a number of fighters today already. He is very much fits in that solid but unspectacular everywhere. You know, there isn't really an area of Jared Gordon's skill set that really stands out. He's not super athletic. He's not a super great striker. He's not super great at anything. He's just he's a tough, solid guy who's decent everywhere but unspectacular everywhere. You know, his style is kind of apply pressure with boxing, shoot a takedown when the opportunity is there, try to ride out top time with like a little bit of ground and pound here. It's a pretty standard style, you know. He's not much of a finisher. You know, he likes to, like I said, he likes to come forward, be aggressive, take you down, and try to like grind you to a decision, basically. I think Paddy can probably find takedowns here. Mhm. Even if he can't, he's such a good scrambler and back taker that like, and Gordon isn't like especially dynamic or athletic. I think that even if Gordon does get takedowns, I think it could ultimately lead to Paddy finding favorable positions because Paddy is so good at just making it wild on the ground and creating scrambles. You know, just by being kind of slippery and squirrely on the ground. You know, like he creates scrambles and he thrives in those scrambles. Um, you know, in the Grant Dawson fight, we saw Grant Dawson take Jared Gordon's back and hang out there for quite a while. I think Paddy's going to be able to get to Jared Gordon's back at some point and probably find a rear naked choke. That is my prediction for this fight. I like Paddy to win. I like him to probably win by rear naked choke. I haven't bet his sub prop, but I was thinking about it, but it's not at a great number because I think the bookmakers know that that's pretty likely outcome, right? So yeah, I like Paddy to win by submission here. If he doesn't find a sub, he should be able to comfortably win a decision. Next up, we've got for the light heavyweight title, Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev. Blachowicz 29-9, same record as Chris Curtis. I just noticed that. Magomed Ankalaev 18-1. The guy would be undefeated if Paul Craig hadn't triangle choked him in literally the last second of his UFC debut. Not Craig's UFC debut, Ankalaev's UFC debut. Ankalaev's minus 265 here. Come back on Jan Blachowicz at plus 210. We've got Jan Blachowicz, 39 years, 9 months, pushing 40 years old. Magomed Ankalaev in the prime of his career at 30. Usually we say about 29 to 31 is kind of like a fighter's prime a lot of the time. We see Ankalaev at 6'3" to Jan's 6'2". And interestingly, Jan has 3 inches of reach, 78 inches to 75. It's hard to know what to say about this fight as far as breaking it down. Like, this wasn't a fight that when I watched it, I had a lot of like really strong reads as far as like, yes, this is how I see it playing out from a technical perspective. You know, to me, the breakdown came more down to just kind of where they're at in their careers, I guess. You know, both guys are strikers. Magomed Ankalaev, he's the guy with EV at the end of his name that isn't really a wrestler. He can wrestle, can grapple, pretty good at both, really, but it isn't what he chooses to do. You know, he's definitely more of a striker. Same with Jan. You know, Jan's more of a striker. He's known for that Polish power, but Jan is a good wrestler and grappler as well, as we saw when he fought Israel Adesanya. Ankalaev, he's a guy who's considered the future of the division, probably a future champion, probably going to become champion on Saturday. And I don't disagree with any of that. But he's one of those guys who, he doesn't always put on the most impressive performances. He doesn't necessarily blow you away. Um, but I think it's part of why he's so effective, really, because he doesn't get emotional. He doesn't really take risks. Excuse me. He just stays really poised. He stays really consistent, and he just does what he needs to do to win. He doesn't take risks. He doesn't put himself in unnecessary situations. He's just he's gonna kind of figure you out, and then he's gonna put a pace on you that isn't anything crazy. It isn't gonna tire him out. Probably not gonna tire you out either. But he's just gonna stay one step ahead of you. He's just gonna do. And not to say that he's like a decision machine. He definitely finds finishes. I think he's found 5 finishes in his UFC tenure so far, if I'm not mistaken. But he keeps it kind of even keel. He doesn't take a lot of risks. Doesn't get emotional. Doesn't do anything that he doesn't need to do to win. I guess if that makes sense. Um, Jan, of course, is pushing 40 years old. Like I said, like I don't count Jan out here. I really don't. And I don't mind anybody who's willing to take a shot on him here as a pretty big underdog because I do think this could be a close fight. I don't think this is a spot where Ankalaev is going to blow Jan out of the water. Ankalaev, the way Ankalaev fights, he's the kind of fighter that's going to allow Jan to stay in the fight, right? I mean, these guys are probably going to have kind of a lukewarm, not terribly exciting kickboxing bout with, maybe some clinching and cage pushing, maybe some attempted takedowns. But, I think it's going to be a sort of slow paced, not super exciting kickboxing match. I don't think it's going to be like Ankalaev is clearly winning every round or anything like that. I think it could be a reasonably close fight. Um, but just because of it's hard to pick against Ankalaev here, simply because Jan is getting a little bit older and slowing down. And Ankalaev, besides losing to Paul Craig, he's now on a 9 fight win streak against better and better fighters in the division, and he's looked good doing it. And I just think that trajectory is probably going to continue. Um, yeah, that's really about all I've got to say about it. Like I said, I don't have much to break it down as far as like, oh, Ankalaev is going to throw this kind of punch and Jan is going to counter. Like I don't have that kind of analysis for you. I just think I think it's going to be a kickboxing match. I think Ankalaev is going to do enough to win it. Basically, I think it probably goes to decision. Maybe Ankalaev finds a late finish. Maybe Blachowicz even finds a finish here, but I think it probably goes to decision. Probably going to be an Ankalaev 49-46 kind of situation or something like that. That is going to be my guess. Um, all right, that's all I got for you as far as the breakdown. We're doing okay on time. I was going to pull up and show you just 1 second. I was also going to show you my bets for the card, and I forgot to pull those up. If you ever want to take a look at my bets, they are at betmma.tips/erikblock. That's ERIKBLOCK. My bets are always free and available there. Just 1 second. I'm getting my profile pulled up here. Let's get that back up. Okay. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. It's not super big, but you can blow it up if you need to, or just go to betmma.tips/erikblock and take a look at it. Anyway, this is what I've got so far. Okay, I did bet Magomed straight. I can't remember if I did or not. I've got Magomed Ankalaev. He's at -250. I put 3 units on him. Paddy Pimblett at -200. I put 2 units on him. Part of the reason I did that bet on Paddy is because I was like, that line is going to swell. And if I decide, when Paddy fights, the line always he's got so many fans that just want to bet on him. That line's going to swell, and it already has, and it's probably going to get up to like -300 by fight time. So I figured, like, I could probably safely bet Paddy now, and if I change my mind, I can probably hedge out for a guaranteed profit later because Jared Gordon's probably going to end up. Well, actually, let's look. Yeah, he's already over +200 in spots, and it's probably going to get better. So if I decided I wanted to hedge out, I could do that. Um, well, like I said, I did put 1 unit on Darren Till at +128. He can be had for like +160, +170 now. I don't know if I'm going to put more on him or not. I put 2.9 units on Ilya Topuria at -145. Man, I got that's quite a bit for me. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 units on the on 4 money line bets. That's a lot for me. Next up, I've got under the props and parlays. I've got a parlay of Ankalaev and Pimblett, 1 unit at +107. Ankalaev and Topuria, 1 unit at +130. I've got Daniel De Silva and Vinicius Salvador going under 1.5. minus 190 for 3 units. 3 units is a big bet on that. Part of the reason I did that was the same thing I said about Patty. I was like, that under 1.5 is currently at minus 190. That might swell up even bigger and give me an opportunity to hedge out. We'll see. And then Dricus Duplessis and Darren Till, I took the under 2.5 there, minus 140 for 1.4 units. And I think that line, I've already got some pretty good closing line value there, I think. Because yeah, like I said, I think Darren Till might find that that served up on a silver platter chin of Dricus Duplessis. But even if he doesn't, Duplessis, if Duplessis is able to get takedowns here and potentially find ground and pound, or obviously he's a heavy hitter, and Till. We haven't seen Till for a while. We don't know what Till's going to look like. Like either way, I think it's a pretty good chance that this fight ends under 2.5 rounds, regardless of who wins it. So that's what I've got so far. I don't anticipate that I'll be adding more bets, but you never know. Sometimes I do. That's all I got for you, folks, for UFC 282. Like I said, make sure to check out. I think it's going to be on Couch Warriors channel or maybe Addicted to Combat's tomorrow night, which is Wednesday the 7th. Going to be doing a 4-man panel. It should be a lot of fun. If you haven't yet, folks, make sure to check me out on Twitter at Erik Betts Fights, on Instagram at Erik_Betts_Fights. If you look at the description of this video here, there's some other links there. I've got an online store. There's the link to my betting Bet MMA tips that we just looked at and that sort of thing. But I appreciate any and all of you who support what I do and watch my videos. I have a lot of fun doing this, and it's super cool to connect with people on the social medias and that sort of thing. Make sure to leave a like on the video. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't. Make sure to leave a comment. All that stuff really does help a lot. As far as getting the algorithm going and getting my name out there a little bit more. But I'm going to leave you with that, folks. I am Erik with Erik Betts Fights, reminding you to play it smart, play it tight, do as I say, not as I do, and let's grow those bankrolls. Enjoy the fights at UFC 282 this weekend, and I'll talk to you soon, gang. Have a good one.